going to do Chapter 4, How to Analyze and Solve Worry Problems. Little quote at the top. I keep 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names are what and why and when and how and where and who. By Kipling. Will the magic formula of Willis H. Carrier, described in Part 1, Chapter 2, solve all worry problems? No, of course not. Then what is the answer? The answer is that we must equip ourselves to deal with the different kinds of worries by learning the 3 basic steps of problem analysis. The 3 steps are: 1. Get the facts, 2. Analyze the facts, and 3. Arrive at a decision, and then act on the decision. Obvious stuff? Yes. Aristotle taught it and used it. And when you and I must use it too if we're going to solve the problems that are harassing us and turning our days and nights into veritable hells. Let's take the first rule. Get the facts. Why is it so important to get the facts? Because unless we have the facts, we can't possibly even attempt to solve our problems intelligently. Without the facts, all we can do is stew around in confusion. My idea? No. That was the idea of the late Herbert E. Hawks, Dean of Columbia College, for 22 years. He had helped 200,000 students solve their worry problems. And he told me that, quote, confusion is the chief cause of worry. I don't think anybody talks to deans anymore. Anyway, he put it this way. He said, half the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. For example, he said, if I have a problem which has to be faced at 3 o'clock next Tuesday, I refuse to even try to make a decision about it until next Tuesday arrives. In the meantime, I concentrate on getting all the facts that bear on the problem. I don't worry, he said. I don't agonize over my problem. I don't lose any sleep. I simply concentrate on getting the facts. And by the time Tuesday rolls around, if I've got all the facts, the problem usually solves itself. I asked Dean Hawks if this meant he had licked worry entirely. Yes, he said, I think I can honestly say that my life is now almost totally devoid of worry. I have found, he went on, that if a man will devote his time to securing facts in an impartial, objective way, his worries will usually evaporate in the light of knowledge. Let me repeat that. If a man will devote his time to securing facts in an impartial, objective way, his worries will usually evaporate in the light of knowledge. But what do most of us do? If we bother with facts at all, and Thomas Edison said in all seriousness, quote, there is no expedient to which a man will not resort to avoid the labor of thinking. If we bother with the facts at all, we hunt like bird dogs after the facts that bolster up what we already think and ignore all the others. We want only the facts that justify our acts, the facts that fit in conveniently with our wishful thinking and justify our preconceived prejudice. As Andre Morose put it, quote, everything is in agreement with our personal desires seems true. Everything that is not puts us into a rage. Is it any wonder, then, that we find it so hard to get the answers to our problem? Wouldn't we have the same trouble trying to solve a second-grade arithmetic problem if we went ahead on the assumption that 2 plus 2 equals 5? Yet there are a lot of people in this world who make life a hell for themselves and others by insisting that 2 plus 2 equals 5, or maybe 500. What can we do about it? We have to keep our emotions out of our thinking. And as Dean Hawks put it, we must secure the facts in an impartial, objective manner. That is not an easy task when we are worried. When we are worried, our emotions are riding high. But there are 2 ideas that I have found are helpful in trying to step aside from our problems in order to see the facts in a clear, objective manner. Number 1, When trying to get the facts, I pretend that I am collecting this information not for myself, but some other person. This helps me to take a cold, impartial view of the evidence. This helps me eliminate my emotions. You got a low power warning there. Uh-oh. I hope it was recording. 2. While trying to collect the facts about the problem that is worrying me, I sometimes pretend that I am a lawyer preparing to argue the other side of the issue. In other words, I'm trying to get the facts against myself. All the facts that are damaging to my wishes. All the facts I don't like to face. And then I write down both my side of the case and the other side of the case, and I generally find that the truth lies somewhere in between the two extremities. Here's the point that I'm trying to make. Neither you, nor I, nor Einstein, nor the Supreme Court of the United States is brilliant enough to reach an intelligent decision on any problem without first getting to the facts. Thomas Edison knew that. At the time of his death, he had 2,500 notebooks filled with facts about problems he was facing. So, rule number 1 for solving our problems is get the facts. Let's do what Dean Hawkes did. Let's not even attempt to solve our problems without first collecting all the facts in an impartial manner. However, getting all the facts in the world won't do us any good until we analyze them and interpret them. I've found from costly experience that it is much easier to analyze the facts after writing them down. In fact, merely writing the facts on a piece of paper and stating our problem clearly goes a long way toward helping us reach a sensible decision. As Charles Kettering put it, quote, "A problem well stated is a problem half solved." Let me show you all this as it works out in practice. Since the Chinese say one picture is worth 10,000 words, suppose I show you a picture of how one man put exactly what we're talking about into concrete action. Let's take the case of Galen Litchfield, a man I have known for several years, one of the most successful American businessmen in the Far East. Mr. Litchfield was in China in 1942 when the Japanese invaded Shanghai. And here is his story as he told me while a guest in my home. Shortly after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, Galen Litchfield began. They came swarming into Shanghai. I was a manager of the Asia Life Insurance Company in Shanghai. They sent us an army liquidator. He was really an admiral, and he gave me orders to assist this man in liquidating our assets. I didn't have any choice in the matter. I could cooperate or else. And the or else was certain death. I went through the motions of doing what I was told because I had no alternative. But there was one block of securities worth $750,000, which I left off the list I gave to the admiral. I left that block of securities off the list because they belonged to our Hong Kong organization and had nothing to do with the Shanghai assets. At the same time, I feared I might be in hot water if the Japanese found out what I had done. And they soon found out. I wasn't in the office when the discovery was made, but my head accountant was there. He told me that the Japanese admiral flew into a rage and stamped and swore and called me a thief and a traitor. I had defied the Japanese army. I knew what that meant. I'd be thrown into the bridge house. The bridge house, the torture chamber of the Japanese Gestapo. I had personal friends who had killed themselves rather than be taken to that prison. I had other friends who had died in that place after 10 days of questioning and torture. Now I was slated for the bridge house myself. What did I do? I heard the news on Sunday afternoon. I suppose I should have been terrified, and I would have been terrified if I hadn't had a definite technique for solving my problems. For years, whenever I was worried, I had always gone to my typewriter and written down 2 questions and the answer to these questions. Number 1, what am I worrying about? Number 2, what can I do about it? I tried to answer those questions without writing them down, but I stopped that years ago. I found that writing down both questions and answers clarifies my thinking. So that Sunday afternoon, I went directly to my room at the Shanghai YMCA and got out my typewriter. I wrote, Number 1, what am I worrying about? I'm afraid I'll be thrown into the bridge house tomorrow morning. Then I typed out the second question. 2, what can I do about it? I spent hours thinking and writing down the 4 courses of action I could take and what the probable consequence of each action would be. Number 1, I can try to explain to the Japanese admiral, but he doesn't speak English. If I try to explain him through an interpreter, I may stir him up again. That might mean death, for he is cruel and would rather dump me in the bridge house than bother talking about it. Number 2, I can try to escape. Impossible. They keep track of me all the time. I have to check in and out my room at the YMCA. If I try to escape, I'll probably be captured and shot. 3, I can stay here in my room and not go near the office again. If I do, the Japanese admiral will be suspicious, will probably send soldiers to get me and throw me into the bridge house without giving me a chance to say a word. And number 4, I can go to the office as usual on Monday morning. If I do, there's a chance that the Japanese admiral may be so busy that he will not think of what I did. Even if he does think of it, he may have cooled off and may not bother me. If this happens, I'm all right. And even if he does bother me, I'll still have a chance to try to explain it to him. So going down to the office as usual Monday morning and acting as if nothing had gone wrong gives me 2 chances to escape the bridge house. As soon as I had thought it all out and decided to accept the 4th plan, to go to the office as usual on Monday morning, I felt immensely relieved. When I entered the office the next morning, the Japanese admiral sat there with a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He glared at me as he always did and said nothing. 6 weeks later, thank God, he went back to Tokyo and all my worries had ended. As I've already said, I probably saved my life by sitting down that Sunday afternoon and writing out all the various steps I could take, and then writing down the probable consequence of each step and calmly coming to a decision. If I hadn't done that, I might have floundered and hesitated and done the wrong thing in the spur of the moment. If I hadn't thought out my problem and come to a decision, I would have been frantic with worry all Sunday afternoon. I wouldn't have slept that night. I would have gone down to the office Monday morning with a harassed and worried look, and that alone might have aroused suspicion of the Japanese admiral and spurred him to act. Experience has proven to me, time after time, the enormous value of arriving at a decision. It is the failure to arrive at a fixed purpose, the inability to stop going round and round in maddening circles, that drives men to nervous breakdowns and living hells. I find that 50% of my worries vanishes once I arrive at a clear, definite decision, and another 40% usually vanishes once I start to carry out that decision. So I banish about 90% of my worries by taking these 4 steps. Number 1, writing down precisely what I'm worried about. Number 2, writing down what I can do about it. Number 3, deciding what to do. And number 4, starting immediately to carry out the decision. Galen Litchfield became the Far Eastern Director of Starr, Park and Freeman Incorporated, representing large insurance and financial interests. This made him one of the most important American businessmen in Asia, and he confessed to me that he owed a large part of his success to this method of analyzing worry and meeting it head-on. Why is this method so superb? Because it is efficient, concrete, and goes directly at the heart of the problem. On top of it all, it is climaxed by the 3rd and indispensable rule: do something about it. Unless we carry out our action, all our fact-finding analysis is whistling upwind. It's a sheer waste of energy. William James said this: when once a decision is reached, an execution is the order of the day. Dismissed absolutely all responsibility and care about the outcome. One more time. William James said this: when once a decision is reached, an execution is the order of the day. Dismiss absolutely all responsibility and care about the outcome. In this case, William James undoubtedly used the word care as a synonym for anxiety. He meant once you have made a careful decision based on the facts, go into action. Don't stop to reconsider. Don't begin to hesitate, worry, or retrace your steps. Don't lose yourself in self-doubting, which begets other doubts. Don't keep looking back over your shoulder. I once asked Wade Phillips, one of Oklahoma's most prominent oil men, how he carried out decisions. He replied, quote, I find that to keep thinking about our problems beyond a certain point is bound to create confusion and worry. There comes a time when any more investigation and thinking are harmful. There comes a time when we must decide and act and never look back. Why don't you employ Galen Litchfield's technique to one of your worries right now? And he left space here that you can, I could write down. Anyway, those are the 4. What am I worrying about? What can I do about it? Here's what I am going to do about it. And 4, when I'm going to start doing it. Again, question number 1. If you have something that can be solved easily, not vaguely, what am I worrying about? Or I guess vaguely even. Okay, let's see. I'm going to write it down in this. You should do it too, just to practice. I'm sure there's something that you're worrying about, even if it is minor. Let's say it's about, I don't know, paying your bills or something. Anyway, that's it for chapter 4. Let's write these 4 things down, and then we'll go in chapter 5. Okay. Number 1. Write down, what am I worrying about? After you've done that, write down, what can I do about it? 3rd, here is what I'm going to do about it. 4, when am I going to start doing it? Okay, chapter 5 is next. Chapter 5. How to eliminate 50% of your business worries. If you're in business, you probably are saying to yourself right now, the title of this chapter is ridiculous. I've been running my business for 19 years, and I certainly know the answers, if anybody else does. The idea of anyone trying to tell me how I can eliminate 50% of my business worries is absurd. Fair enough. I would have felt exactly the same way myself if a few years ago I had seen this title on the chapter. It promises a lot, and promises are cheap. Let's be very frank about it. Maybe I won't be able to help you eliminate 50% of your business worries. In the last analysis, no one can do that except yourself. But what I can do is show you how other people have done it, and leave the rest up to you. You may recall that on page 266 of this book, I quoted the world-famous Dr. Alexis Carrel saying, "Those who do not know how to fight worry die young." Since worry is that serious, wouldn't you be satisfied if I could help you eliminate even 10% of your worries? Yes? Good. Well, I'm going to show you how one business executive eliminated not 50% of his worries, but 75% of all the time he formerly spent in his conferences trying to solve business problems. Furthermore, I'm not going to tell you the story about Mr. Jones or Mr. X, or how a man in Ohio. Vague stories that you can't check up on. It concerns a very real person, Leon Shimkin, a former partner and general manager of one of the most foremost publishing houses in these United States, Simon and Schuster, Rockefeller Center, New York. Here is Leon Shimkin's experience in his own words. Quote, "For 15 years I spent almost half of every business day holding conferences and discussing problems. Should we do this or that, or nothing at all? We would get tense, twist in our chairs, walk the floor, argue, and go around in circles. When night came, I would be utterly exhausted. I fully expected to go on doing this sort of thing for the rest of my life. I had been doing it for 15 years, and it would never occur to me that there was a better way of doing it. If anyone had told me that I could eliminate 3/4 of all the time I spent in those worried conferences and 3/4 of my nervous strain, I would have thought he was a wild-eyed, slap-happy armchair optimist. Yet, I devised a plan that did just that. I have been using this plan for 8 years and has performed wonders for my efficiency, my health, and my happiness. It sounds like magic, but like all magic tricks, it is extremely simple when you see how it is done. Here is the secret. First, I immediately stopped the procedure I had been using in my conferences for 15 years, a procedure that began with my troubled associates reciting all the details of what had gone wrong, and ended up asking, "What shall we do?" Second, I made a new rule, a rule that everyone who wishes to present a problem to me must first prepare and submit a memorandum answering these 4 questions. Question 1, what is the problem? In the old days, we used to spend an hour or 2 in a worried conference without anyone's knowing specifically and concretely what the real problem was. We used to work ourselves into a lather discussing our problems without ever troubling to write out specifically what our problem was. Question 2. What is the cause of the problem? As I look back over my career, I am appalled at all the wasted hours I had spent in worried conferences without ever trying to find out clearly the conditions which lay at the root of the problem. Question 3. What are all the possible solutions of the problem? In the old days, one man in the conference would suggest one solution. Someone else would argue with him. Tempers would flare. We'd often get clear off the subject. And at the end of the conference, no one would have written down all the various things we could do to attack the problem. And question 4, what solution do you suggest? I used to go into a conference with a man who had spent hours worrying about a situation and going around in circles without ever once thinking through all the possible solutions and writing it down. This is the solution I recommend. My associates rarely come to me now with their problems. Why? Because they've discovered that in order to answer those 4 questions, they have to get all the facts and think their problems through. And after they have done that, they find that 3/4 of the cases they don't have to consult me at all, because a proper solution has popped out like a piece of bread popping out from an electric toaster. Even in those cases where consultation is necessary, the discussion takes about 1/3 of the time formally required, because it proceeds along an orderly, logical path to a reasoned conclusion. Much less time is now consumed in the house of Simon and Schuster in worrying and talking about what is wrong, and a lot more action is obtained towards making those things right. My friend, Frank Betger, one of the top insurance men in America, told me he not only reduced his business worries, but he nearly doubled his income by a similar method. Years ago, Frank Betger said, quote, "When I first started to sell insurance, I was filled with a boundless enthusiasm and love for my work. And then something happened. I became so discouraged that I despised my work and thought of giving up. I think I would have quit if I hadn't got the idea one Saturday morning of sitting down and trying to get the root of my worries. Number 1, I asked myself, first, just what is the problem? The problem was I was not getting high enough returns for the staggering amount of calls I was making. I seemed to do pretty well at selling a prospect until the moment came for closing the sale. Then the customer would say, 'Well, I'll think it over, Mr. Bedgar. Come and see me again.' It was the time I wasted on these follow-up calls that was causing my depression. Number 2, I asked myself, what are the possible solutions? But to get to the answer to that one, I had to study the facts. I got out my record book for the last 12 months and studied the figures. I made an astounding discovery, right there in black and white. I discovered that 70% of my sales have been closed on the very first interview. 23% of my sales have been closed on the second interview, and only 7% of my sales have been closed on the third, fourth, fifth, etc. Interviews which were running me ragged and taking my time. In other words, I was wasting fully 1/2 of my working day on part of my business which was responsible for only 7% of my sales. 3. What's the answer? The answer was obvious. I immediately cut out all my visits beyond the second interview and spent the extra time building up new prospects. The result was unbelievable. In a very short time, I had doubled the cash value of every visit I made. As I said, Frank Bedker became one of the best-known life insurance salesmen in the country. But he was on the point of giving up. He was on the point of admitting failure, until analyzing the problem gave him a boost on the road to success. Can you apply these questions to your own business problems? To repeat my challenge, they can reduce your worries by 50%. Here they are again. 1. What is the problem? Number 2. What is the cause of the problem? Number 3. What are all possible solutions to the problem? And number 4. What solution do you suggest? Okay, so that's part 2. That's pretty quick, wasn't it? So here's the part 2 in a nutshell. Basic techniques on analyzing worry. Rule number 1, get the facts. Remember that Dean Hawkes of Columbia University said that half of the worry in the world is caused by people trying to make decisions before they have sufficient knowledge on which to base a decision. Rule number 2, after carefully weighing all of the facts, come to a decision. Rule 3, once a decision is fully reached, act. Get busy carrying out your decision and dismiss all anxiety about the outcome. Rule number 4, when you or any of your associates are tempted to worry about a problem, write out and answer the following questions. The ones that we just stated here, 1, 2, 3, 4. A, what is the problem? B, what is the cause of the problem? C, what are all possible solutions? And D, what is the best solution? Okay, with that done, we're going to do number 6 next.